Welcome to the Power of Coaching, brought to you by the Daring Success Team. Four amazing life coaches from four corners of the earth. I would like to start by introducing myself. I am Hardy Brooklyn. I am a life coach that helps individuals live more authentically in their life to make themselves happier and more fulfilling. I am based out of Brooklyn, New York, and I have been coaching for about 5 years now. I'm also going to introduce Anna Marosa. She is a life coach from Milan, Italy, and she is currently taking school today. She's getting schooled, just like everyone should all the time. Keep learning, people. And she is a life coach that helps women fulfill all of their dreams in their life. Stan, introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Hardy. I'm Stan. I'm from Perth, Western Australia. I'm a moving forward and goal success coach. I help people move from stuck to an extraordinary life.
Isabel, let's find out a little bit about you.
Well, thanks, Hardy. Hello, everybody. I'm Isabel, and I'm a women's empowerment coach. I'm based in Quito, in Ecuador, South America, and I help professional, introverted women and female entrepreneurs to turn their doubts into success.
Thank you, Stan and Isabel. Now, I want to start off with this week. Every Tuesday morning at 9:30 Eastern Time, we have a practice coaching group. And this week, because of my brilliant eating habits, I was unable to attend. So for this session, I am going to learn what I would have learned if I didn't eat 2.5-week-old salad that I should not have eaten. So at this week's group, the topic was money. And in America, we have all sorts of crazy problems around money. And a lot of coaches work with people. So the first thing I'd like to find out is during this group, how was it talking about money with people from different cultures? Stan.
Well, I dealt with Mac, and money in Nigeria was vastly different. And I also was dealing with Kelly at the same time. She's from United States. And I used 9 questions that I got from Evercoach that fitted really nicely in with what I like to work with money. And it was very good difference to see the difference between someone who understood money and someone who didn't understand money in the same conversation.
So what would you say the American or the UK person understood money better?
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with location. I just think it had to do with the person. The one person knew more about their money than the other person. So I don't want to say, yeah, UK is better than the USA because I'm sure we can find people in both countries that are the same. And Mac deals a lot with people in Nigeria, but I wasn't part of that conversation. That was Isabel. Isabel was having a conversation about different cultures and different understandings, which was interesting, to say the least.
Isabel, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, so yeah, I was with Mark and we were talking about the difference how in Nigeria and here in Ecuador, people perceive money, the way they deal with money, as it has to be quick money. As for, and if it's not sustainable, for example, it doesn't matter. And it's different, for example, in the UK, in Europe, in the States, in France, where I come from, where we see money in a different way. And I think it's so important to, as a coach, to assess that with our client, and ask what money represents to them. What does it mean? How is it used in their environment? Because that will help us as well to get unstuck about money or to change their limiting beliefs.
In life, I run into people from all walks of life that don't respect money, they don't understand money. And for me, a lot of times when I'm coaching them, they want the answer. They're not getting that aha moment with the money questions because they are so afraid of money. They're afraid of losing money. They're afraid of being poor. At least in America, money controls everything. So everybody's always trying to make that quick, fast buck, just like in Nigeria. And they're trying to scam you pretty much just as much, depending on where you are in the country. So when I work with people around it, the first thing I try to figure out is, where does their money belief system come from?
Mhm.
How do you approach people from different cultures to figure out where their money belief system comes from, Stan or Isabel?
Well, I think it's very important to find out because obviously we are influenced by our environment, about our family as well, because family beliefs, and money doesn't grow on tree, or you have to work hard, or look at those rich people, and suddenly you get like this view of money being negative. So I think that's the first thing as a coach we need to assess. And you're right, Hardy, is where that belief comes from, and where the environment, or what the environment taught our coaching.
Stan, what are like a couple of questions that people can use to try to figure out where their beliefs are starting to come from around money?
So one of the questions I like to ask is, what conversations did you have around money when you were growing up? Because that's a lot of stuff. So one would be around the dinner table, and we had a fairly open family. We discussed things. Um, Nothing was off the table. So if we asked Dad how much he earned, then he would let us know. Um, it wasn't hidden or anything like that. And I picked up things from my mum about how to operate a budget, and how to put money aside. And I've done it for ages. Like we used to, when you get cash, used to put it in envelopes and say, oh, I've been paid, I need to put some aside for electricity, I need to put some aside for phone, I need to put some aside to spend, I need to put some aside to save or invest. Is one of my big ones. Yeah. So, and the other question I really like to answer is, what money beliefs are you creating now? Because sometimes you've outgrown those beliefs. You're in your own place. You're doing your own things. And what money beliefs are you now creating?
Isabel, what type of questions do you ask?
Um, uh, Similar ones, like what was discussed about money, and Stan used example about his family. And my parents were born after the war, right, in France, and then they had that belief that we had to work really, really hard, and we had to save just in case, and we were brought up with that belief, and I realized that it's not true. You can actually work intelligently. You don't have to work and have hard. I mean, you can have fun, and you can make money. As long as you enjoy what you do, things will happen. So yeah, definitely. But there was one question, and Stan will vouch for it as well, he used when he said, if I gave you $5 million today, how would you respond? And my response was, thank you, right? But not everybody will say that. Stan, you had some
Yes.
different
So
answers.
I asked Kelly and Mac, who I was with, and I asked the group as well when we had a look at the questions. And I asked some other coaches, and one coach actually said, "Oh my God, I would be overwhelmed." Like, I'm like, okay. And like, lots of people heard me say, "What would you spend it on?" And I'm like, no, that was the question beforehand. This question is, how would you respond? Like, that's a different kettle of fish. And one of the other questions that I asked was, how is it that you know that you're living a rich life? And lots of people, I've asked about probably a dozen people since Tuesday when we did it, and everybody immediately thought of money, but some of my more spiritual sort of friends, that money wasn't an issue about being a rich life. I didn't say anything about money. I said, how do you know you're living a rich life? And they said, if I can do this, or I'm free or enlightened, and you're like, well, that's different. Where lots of people thought rich life, oh, it must be money, you know,
And that's
some of
a
their beliefs that
perception.
came up.
And sorry for interrupting. That's a belief that a lot of people have. They have a belief that in order to be happy, in order to be rich, in order to be fulfilled, they have to have more money than everyone else. And I work with a lot of my clients to change that belief, because a lot of times the less money you have, the happier you are. When I walk down my block, the rich people are not the happy ones. They're
Mhm.
not having fun. They're not smiling in the morning. They're not engaging. They're not coming out and having fun on the weekends. They're worrying about their money, and they're doing things with their money because of whatever belief system they have around money.
Mhm.
My
Well,
answer, my answer to the 5 million question is I would say thank you. I would appreciate it. And then I would take it away and I would do something positive with it. I would use
mhm,
half for myself and then half to charity.
I agree. I agree. And to go back to what you said, Hardy, I mean, I ended up here in Ecuador doing a 5 months backpacking journey. And that's why I realized that you can live happy with much less than we think. And here, people in Ecuador, some of them don't have the opportunities, don't have the money, but they are always happy and always happy to share as well. So that's why we need to change that belief about money, that we can't live without it. So we need money, obviously, but we don't need as much as we think we need.
I completely agree with you on that.
and
So
and we have a full cultural belief in here in Australia about being the great Aussie battler, where you just make enough money to kind of have a house and a couple of cars, where you're not getting necessarily ahead. And you're like, wow, what a collective money belief that we have. And I'm a little bit the same. My granddad is 99. He's pushing 100. And so they came from the same place. A lot of his stuff was all about, if you don't have the money to buy it, can you make it? Can you fix it? Can you repair it? Can you do stuff? And you're like, oh my God, I've dragged some of those beliefs into myself, kind of family system stuff. So the broad Australian collective plus my family and my mum's side were farmers, so they were all about no one does without, but there are seasons for everything.
and I suppose you pass them on to your kids.
Yeah, and you're thinking, what beliefs have I passed on? And as I said, I like the question, what beliefs are you creating? Like we teach our boys, we play a lot of board games, so money's not off the table. One of the ones that we like to play is a stock market game, and I've got two different sons. So one son's very careful with his money. He's very careful about what he buys. And one game he was playing, he was buying and selling the shares as quick as he could get them so that he didn't build up a big amount and hit the bad square that says, you have to pay the tax for it. And of course he was like, how are you guys getting ahead? And we're like, oh, sometimes you have to risk it. You have to, you have to hold a few so you can get a few more shares and you can run the board a bit more. But you might get more shares, but hit the tax, and then pay and go broke sort of thing. Where he was trying to just he was creeping up slowly, but we got to the stage where we kind of jumped ahead of him because we'd taken some risks on money. And you're like, whoa, I wonder where that belief came from, because it's not something we're careful with our money. We know, we save our money and we're careful with it, but we also, we have what I call spending money, and spending money is you're allowed to spend it on anything. generally for me, it's like, a coffee or a chocolate bar or stuff. And the kids are right into Lego and toys and that sort of stuff. So, they can spend their money, but we also teach them about saving. So if you want something and it's more than your pocket money, you have to save the money.
Mhm.
And we have them invest. So when they get paid pocket money, 10% of it goes into charity stuff, and 10% of it goes into their investment account that we put in their bank account, so they get stuff for later on.
Yeah, that's great, because that's the thing as well, is helping kids to see the value of money, right? And so it changes the way they perceive it, obviously, because it's like saving, but at the same time as well using it for pleasure, to play, or to buy something they really want, but with the safety net as putting some aside. So yeah. Mhm.
And when we coach, that's a lot of what we do with our clients. We basically are trying to break the limiting beliefs with our clients, or have them understand their beliefs that were created for them when they were growing up, from their government belief system and from what they see in marketing on TV. In America, everybody has a huge fear around health insurance,
Mm.
because that's really what we're struggling to. Everybody struggles to get enough money. Health insurance comes before food on a lot of people's tables. Because if you go to the
Wow.
doctor here and you don't have health insurance in certain states, you're fully responsible for everything out of pocket. I mean, I just had shoulder surgery. I have very good health insurance from the state. My shoulder surgery was over $200,000 is what the doctor was paid, plus the hospital, plus everyone else. If I had a certain type of health insurance company, I could have been responsible for 60% of that.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the culture, how do you, both of you, work with your clients to understand how government policy and how what they vote on is affecting their money bias?
Very good question.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose a lot of it's kind of getting to understand them and letting them sometimes tell their story about where their beliefs are coming from. One that kind of comes up all the time, and we did some money stuff when I was learning coaching, and I was like, I don't have that belief. So a lot of people have the belief that rich people are crooks, or they must have done something to get that money. So I grew up in a farming community, and they got money because they worked hard, and the harvest came in and they got paid. And my question was never, well, they must have done something bad to get that money. My question was, how did they get that money? And how does that help me?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, in a small town. I'm a town kid. I've got farm kids. One of my first jobs was rouseabouting. So our job was to bring sheep in and help clean up and shift shorn like wool onto the rack so it can be um, processed, tagged, evaluated, and then packed into the wool bales, sort of thing. And you would get paid, but like we would do mornings and afternoons for shearing. We didn't do all day because we tended to go to school. Um, but yeah, like it was hard work to bring in sheep and get them organized and do stuff. And we had some of the fastest shearers in Australia in our town. So they would be shearing something like 300 sheep a day, and we'd have 6 or 7 sheep. So you had to be quick and fast, but at the end of it, you got paid. You got a couple of $100 for a day's work. And so I never had that belief about like I had to look for a bunch of other beliefs about money. And because it was all just like, oh, working hard and getting paid is part of what I know.
I think personally that when I coach about money, I move away about external effects, right? And I look at what was the money perception in the environment, because that's where the problem is. because usually it can be something from parents saying, oh, you see that one he made his money because he's corrupted, right? Yes, it will happen, but it comes from somebody you trust, and that's where we have to break that limiting belief. So not from like, oh, he's corrupted. It's just like, that's a perception of somebody we trust who told us that. But is it true? We don't know. So we need to change that belief and influence our environment, our life. What that person, corrupted or not corrupted, did, well, that's his problem, but we need to change so we don't get stuck on that money belief and thinking, okay, and in a way we turn it around, and it's just like, okay, if I want money, I have to be corrupted. Is that true? So we need to change that belief.
Yes,
And half of it's unconscious. We don't even realize that's been installed in us. You just all of a sudden got this belief about what happens with money, and I notice a lot of our kids nowadays, because everything's paid electronically, don't have an understanding of money.
no.
So I got my kids, and like I've just started coaching, so like through the pandemic I'd lost 2 jobs and a business sort of thing, and we don't have heaps of money. We're not what we would consider poor in Australia, but we're not what people would call super rich either, but we have a whole bunch of other richness factors. And I got the physical Monopoly money out and paid the boys what we got paid for a month, and then said, now you have to pay the mortgage, pay it back. Now you have to pay the groceries, pay it back. And they started getting, and like I've taken them shopping and then said, you know, what's in this shopping container is $120 worth of food. And they're like, oh, but there's no treat food in there. There's no, we're not big meat eaters. We do eat meat, but we don't eat a lot of it. And I said, well, if we bought meat, go and tell me how much a thing of sausages is. And they come back and say, oh, it's $15. I'm like, okay, so what are we taking out to put sausages in? They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, go over budget. We can't afford stuff.
And then just to wrap up the whole money section, Stan brought up a very important part about budget. What are the types of questions do you ask your clients, or what types of things do you want people to think about when they're trying to overcome their limiting beliefs and everything around them and all the external influences when they're trying to set that budget and not go over budget when they're in the store buying food, or not go in the budget when they're, shopping for booze or something like that?
So my first question will be, do you have a budget?
Yeah, or as well, Stan's got a very good question, is what is your money habit?
And that's a perfect question for us to end this section on. Please, if you're out there and you're thinking about money, think about what your money habits are, and also think about where all those beliefs are coming from, how you were affected by them. And it's going to take time. It's not an instantaneous thing. Because one of the things that I learned is that a lot of my money effect came from my grandmother. And I never thought that because we never talked about money. But I spent a lot of time with her. And I watched how she treated it and respected it and interacted with it. And it was very, very different than the way that my parents did. And I was much more affected by her. And I treat money because I saw how much happier she was around the topic and talking about it than my immediate family. So I ended up going her route, which is very different than my immediate family, which has caused a lot of friction.
That's very interesting that you would pick your grandmother's influence over your family's influence.
Yep.
I think we get really influenced by people around us, especially as a child. And if we spend time more, as you were saying, with your grandma or with other people like an uncle or somebody, we always, as a child, refer to an adult as a model. So that's why we get so influenced.
So this coming Tuesday, we have another amazing session coming up. And we're going to be talking about how to get unstuck and how to deal with procrastination. I know that
Spit.
everybody in the world has those problems, but what are some things that you're prepared to question or engage our attendees around those topics, Stan?
Oh, I love getting people that are kind of stuck or procrastinating. It's generally their big thing. A lot of it can actually stem from limiting beliefs and stuff. Um, Fear is a big one. So I like to find out what's behind why they're stuck or why they're procrastinating. Um, and sometimes it's just bad habits. They get up, they come home from work, they think I'm going to do something extra. I just turned on the TV. I didn't do any work, and as Mel Robbins would say, can you put aside 15 minutes a day to do something for your business or your dream? And when I ask people that question, they go, oh, not really. I don't have any time. But they just kind of stuck in their thinking mode and not looking outside. What else can they do and where can they fit 15 minutes?
Isabel, when we're dealing with procrastination and getting unstuck, how do you figure out what neurodiverse issues you're dealing with before you start coaching a client? Because if somebody has like severe ADHD or is manically depressed or is bipolar, we have to use very different techniques and skills when we're coaching them.
Well, we always have to connect first, the connection. So I like the nonverbal language. And you know that I like silence, for example. So I will just let people talk about why they're unstuck and tell me their stories. I will adjust as well, the way they talk. I'm an extrovert, and sometimes I talk very quickly, right? So I will slow down and I will be even more attentive to the words, like reading between the lines, right? Or listening between the lines. So that's what I would do, and just give them that space, non-judgmental space, where they can talk about their emotion and why they're stuck. But there is one thing for me, I realize when I coach that, I mean, when it's about business, it's different in another part of the coaching session. But when we talk about business, very often it's a lack of motivation, right? So it's just like lack of motivation, lack of priority. So if you're not motivated, you're not going to put priority on that project. So and then I go back to the why. Why did you start this new project? Why do you want to do that? And I always say as well, sometimes we've got doubts and sometimes we get stuck, to go back to those whys. So and that's what I do.
So how does that work, Stan or Isabel, chime in? When you're dealing with somebody that's severely ADD, which has attention deficit disorder and has bipolar on top of that, because they're not actually able to answer those types of questions. Honestly.
Yeah, so I suppose getting to know the person and getting to know their story is part of it. Understanding where they're coming from is part of where what I like to get into in their coach. So I kind of like to walk in their shoes because they're different from me. Um, yeah, I don't know that I've coached anybody that's got that severe sort of stuff, but I have coached people with ADHD and neurodivergent stuff that, yeah, just kind of working with them and working where they're at in their world is probably where I'm coming from. Um, yeah, can be challenging as a coach to find people with different things.
Isabel, how much do you think compassion affects coaching and getting unstuck for people that have neurodiverse issues?
I think compassion is for everybody. Compassion for your coachee, and especially if they've got HHD. It's you have to be compassionate and be patient as well. That's why I was saying to you, the connection is very important because each individual is different, right? So we need to connect on their level and to make them feel safe, right? I think that's what I would say. Feel safe, and that's the job of a coach, where you create a safe space where people can open up and listen to them, and as I was saying, just like sometimes just let them vent, tell they say what they have to say, what they feel, the emotions, and just wait for them to just lower that emotion, or as well using some breathing technique, where they just before starting the session, just like breathing technique, so they come back into the present and lower the emotions, and then we can start without the emotion getting in the way.
So that's all good. So how do we work with, and that's all for like neurodiverse people and a little bit of being compassionate, but how does that relate to, let's say, the middle-aged man who is not happy in his job, doesn't think he's making money, doesn't think his wife is attractive enough? How does all that translate to those type of customers? Because there's a lot more of those out there.
This would be that, hey, coaching is a lot about switching and shifting mindsets. I mean, we just use different questions. We were talking about money questions, and now we're talking about unstuck. There's a lot of different questions to use, a lot of different tools. So one of my things is, if it doesn't work, then that's on me as a coach. So if a tool doesn't work, then I need to apply it a different way, ask a different question. As I said, get into someone's world and figure out what they do. I've had a couple of ADD people that I like to get people to write it down and think about it, but it didn't really work for them. But pictures was amazing. They could do a picture, they could draw a picture, it'll mean something to them. I don't have to worry about whether I can read it or understand it. It's only for them. So pictures is definitely something that they work with. Yeah, and I do a lot. I usually get lots of people to do journals. And the good thing I just learned like a couple of days ago is a lot of ADD people are doing picture logs, not written logs. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been doing that a couple of times now, but I'm like very interested in. I'm going to be doing Anna and go learning about picture journals.
So in the unstuck stuck world and the procrastination world, right now I have a client that I'm trying to coach, and he doesn't seem to get the aha moments. He always just wants an answer. So he just shuts down during the session.
Oh,
and
tough ones.
It seems like the aha questions are very obvious, but I think that he has a limiting belief that's preventing him from getting that aha moment. But he doesn't believe that he has a limiting belief and doesn't want to work on it.
Oh,
What kind of advice should our coaches expect to get from us when they show up to those practice sessions on those types of topics?
Well, first I will say, Hardy, art therapy is good as well. So if you can't talk about it, you could draw. That's what Stan was saying, like drawing, and using the different colors. So afterwards, seeing it on paper, sometimes that's the aha moment, right? And depending what the limiting belief is, like working on what is stuck on, and then what he wants to achieve, right? Two different drawings and see how he can reach that, right? So I like art therapy because it helps to visualize. And sometimes as well, what I use is after the drawing, after they've drawn, I'm just like, okay, can you explain to me the drawing as if it were somebody else's drawing? What do you see? So they distance themselves from the problem, and at the same time, they answer the question.
Very
And
good.
sometimes, Hardy, it's for me especially. Sometimes it can be frustrating as a coach, but sometimes you're holding space for them, and that space might be several sessions because they don't know what they don't know, and we're shining a torch for them. They just don't get that they've got a limiting belief, and we can go, oh my god, it's like a big neon sign flashing at us. And you're like, you're just kind of waiting for them to kind of, get the jackpot. Like when all their numbers line up and they get sevens across the board, you're like, yes. That's kind of the thrilling part for coaching. But I know what you mean. Sometimes it can take a long time to kind of get there. And you just want to give them the answer. Just do this and you're done.
Well, I don't want to give them the answer. I want to figure out what are better questions to ask them to get them to the answer. And I've gotten to the point with this client where he feels not quitting is a value, not a belief.
Mm-hmm.
He feels staying in it, toughing it out until they fire him is a value. It's not a belief. He doesn't think that he should be looking for another job, jumping ship, doing a journal, figuring out how the interactions are going bad, all of the things that he's had many aha moments. It's more important not to let his parents down by being a quitter.
So maybe to say to him, listen, staying in that space, why'd you gain? Why'd you gain out of it? Because we always get something, we gain something and we lose something. So what is he going to gain by staying? And what is he going to gain by leaving? And just show him the difference based on his answers. That's what I would do.
Perfect. Stan, do you have any questions that the coaches should think about or be prepared to ask this coming Tuesday?
Oh, any questions? Oh, I don't know. My big one I always like to ask is when somebody comes to me about stuff is how was that a challenge for you? Because that kind of turns it around on them. Like sometimes they're like, oh, yeah, I'm just stuck. I'm not doing that. How is that a challenge for you? Oh, well, I'm not getting my work. Like it starts them thinking, not, as you said, I'm not giving them the answer. I'm trying to coach them across the top of it. Um, but yeah, it can be quite difficult for people to see where they're up to. That's my other question. Probably, I always try and get them to set. I'm a goal success coach, so getting them to set something they can do for the week, even small things, is something I like to get going. And the other thing is, if you're saying one of the questions I sometimes ask is, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Including holding the limiting belief, because as you sometimes get secondary gain and stuff like that when it's coming up, and I am curious about what they're getting, because sometimes I can find a way through, over, or around whatever's going. And you're a coach, and sometimes this takes a long time.
Yes, it
And
does.
so sometimes we can do it in like 10 minutes and we can be on to the next cool stuff.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I think we need to convey is that I work with clients. We all work with clients, and I have clients that purchase different programs from me. And I have clients that within basically a 6-week program or a 2-month program, they've hit 1 or 2 aha moments and they're moving forward. And then I have clients that are in the 6-month or the 6-year program, And I feel like they're avoiding me. They're avoiding my questions and they're not moving forward. So one of the things that we're going to work with, and we will be able to have people to bounce these things off of, is when you show up on to our Tuesday workshops, these are questions that you can bring and present. We are here to support you and give us 3 different coaches, 3 different modalities, 3 different training schools. And when the amazing Anna can make it, that's 4. So typically you can have 4 of us in the room with you, as well as at least 3 to 5 or 6 other coaches minimum that can help you learn and become a better coach. And if you're just out there wanting to see what coaching is like, feel free to drop in, send us a note. You can reach us at coaches at daringsuccessteam.com. Once again, it's coaches at daringsuccessteam.com. If you want more information about us, check us out on LinkedIn. Look for Daring Success Team page on LinkedIn, or you can find us on Facebook on the Daring Success Team. You can also find us on the web at www.daringsuccessteam.com. We look forward to seeing everybody October 17th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:30 p.m. Western Australian Time, and lots of times in between and around that. But those are the ones I can easily remember. Any final comments from Isabel or Stan before we close this out?
So my big one would be, I know that we coach around the world, and probably the big one is, I use it all the time, is the World Time Buddy, because that helps me figure out what time it is wherever they are. Because obviously sometimes we give a time and then people are like, well, I'm in Europe and I'm in Africa or India, and I'm like, get the World Time Buddy. That'll help you find the right time.
That's true. And this month, Europe is changing time, the US as well. So stay tuned and use that website.
And once again, we miss Anna, and she will be back hopefully next week, and hopefully we will see her on Tuesday. This has been The Power of Coaching, brought to you by the Daring Success Team. Until Tuesday, October 17th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time or 9:30 p.m. Australian Time, please join us for our Zoom practice session. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
See you on Tuesday.